There is an Amish family in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, that grows enough food to feed 8 people on a property the size of a suburban backyard. No tractor, no irrigation system, no fertilizer delivery, no seed catalog subscription. They have been doing it since 1931, and the technique at the center of their system was declared illegal in 11 states between 1991 and 2009. Not because it failed, because it worked too well and the wrong people noticed. I know how that sounds. I know that sentence sounds like the setup for something you have heard before. So let me give you the number first, and let the number do the work. 1 inch of rain falling on a 1,000 square foot roof produces approximately 620 gallons of water. 620 gallons from 1 inch of rain on the roof you already own. The average American city receives between 30 and 50 inches of rain per year. At 40 inches of annual rainfall on a 1,000 square foot roof, that is 24,000 gallons of water falling on your house every year. Enough to grow a substantial garden, fill a stock tank, water livestock, and supplement household use. Falling on your roof, for free, every year. And in 11 states, for a period spanning nearly 2 decades, collecting that water in a barrel was a crime. That is what this video is about. The system the Amish use to grow food with no land, no irrigation bill, no fertilizer, and no permission. The legal history that tried to stop it, the industry that funded the laws, and the specific technique I found in a Mennonite agricultural record from 1931 that no modern urban farming guide has ever described. Let me start with the legal history because it is the most clarifying part of this story, and because understanding it will tell you everything. You need to know about who benefits from you not knowing what your roof is already doing. In 1991, the state of Colorado passed legislation clarifying that all precipitation falling within the state boundaries was the property of the state, not the property of the landowner on whose land it fell. The legal framework was the prior appropriation doctrine, a water law system developed in the arid West, where water rights had been allocated to downstream users, primarily agricultural irrigators, before most of the residential development in the region occurred. The argument was that allowing upstream homeowners to collect rainwater would reduce the flow, reaching downstream rights holders. The argument had a surface logic in the context of large-scale diversion. Applied to a 55-gallon barrel under a residential downspout, it was a legal mechanism for preventing something that threatened a different kind of downstream interest entirely. By 2009, 11 Western states had some form of restriction on residential rainwater collection. The restrictions varied in severity. Some prohibited collection entirely. Some limited collection to specific volumes. Some required permits that were functionally impossible to obtain. But the pattern was consistent. States that had been developed around the municipal water delivery model were using century-old water law as the mechanism to prevent the most obvious alternative to that model from taking root in residential practice. Colorado reversed its prohibition in 2016, allowing collection of up to 110 gallons per household. The reversal followed years of advocacy by environmental groups and a formal study by the Colorado Division of Water Resources that found that allowing residential rainwater collection would have no measurable impact on downstream water availability, because the vast majority of precipitation falling on residential rooftops in Colorado evaporates or runs off into storm drains. The argument that had been used for 25 years to keep a barrel under a downspout illegal had no basis in the hydrology. The Colorado Division of Water Resources conducted that study in 2007. The prohibition remained in place for 9 more years after the study. Demonstrated it was hydrologically baseless, which means the prohibition was not maintained because of the water rights argument. It was maintained because of something else, and the something else was not subtle. The municipal water utility associations in Colorado lobbied against the 2016 Reform Bill, the same organizations whose members billed Colorado households for water that was falling on their roofs for free. Let me give you one more detail from that lobbying effort, because it reveals exactly how far an industry will go to protect a revenue stream. During the 2016 Colorado legislative hearings, a representative of the Colorado Water Congress testified that widespread residential rainwater collection could destabilize municipal water rate structures by reducing the customer base that utility infrastructure costs are spread across. That sentence is worth reading twice. They were not arguing that collection was hydrologically harmful. They had already lost that argument 9 years earlier. They were arguing that if too many people stopped buying their product, the price would go up for those who remained, which is an honest statement of the problem, but a remarkable thing to say in a legislative hearing about whether citizens should be allowed to collect rain from their own roofs. They were asking the government to protect their pricing model. They had the access and funding to make that argument in a government chamber, while the homeowner who wanted to put a barrel under her downspout had neither. The Amish in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, never faced these restrictions. Pennsylvania has no prior appropriation doctrine. Water law in the eastern states operates on the riparian system, where landowners have rights to use water on their property. And the Amish used those rights continuously, quietly, practically, for as long as anyone can remember. The cistern on an Amish farm in Lancaster County is as standard a piece of infrastructure as the barn or the springhouse. It collects what falls. It stores what is collected. The garden uses what is stored. The system asks permission from no one, because the rain does not belong to anyone. That is the principle. Now let me show you the system. The traditional Amish rainwater system has 4 components: the collection surface, which is the roof; the conveyance, which is the gutter and downspout; the first flush diverter, which is the piece almost nobody outside these communities knows about; and the storage vessel, which is the cistern or barrel. Most modern guides treat the storage as the main event. The Amish system inverts that priority. The first flush diverter makes everything else work. It is the component that the municipal water industry has most successfully kept out of mainstream awareness. Here is the problem with collecting rainwater that most people discover after they set up a barrel. The first water that runs off after a dry period carries everything accumulated: bird droppings, dust, pollen, oxidized roofing material, decomposing leaf matter from the gutters, atmospheric particulates. The first flush of runoff is genuinely contaminated, not dangerously so for garden use, but for drinking water or food washing. The first flush needs to be separated from the clean water. The first flush diverter does this automatically with no moving parts and no electricity. It is a simple vertical pipe, sealed at the bottom. It is connected to the downspout before the main storage connection. The pipe volume is calculated to hold the first 2 gallons of runoff. When rain begins, the first flush fills the vertical pipe. Once full, subsequent water overflows into the main storage connection and enters the cistern clean. After the rain, the accumulated first flush water drains slowly through a small hole at the bottom of the pipe, emptying it for the next event. The device is a sealed PVC pipe with a drilled hole. It costs under $10 in materials. It requires no maintenance, and it transforms the water quality of your collected rainwater from questionable to genuinely clean for garden and supplemental use. The Mennonite agricultural record I mentioned at the beginning of this video described a version of this device installed on a farmhouse in Lancaster County in 1931. The entry called it a settling tube and described its function in practical terms that made clear the farmer who installed it understood exactly what he was doing. 93 years ago, on a farm in Pennsylvania, with PVC not yet invented and galvanized pipe as the material. The same physics, the same function. That 1931 record was the oldest documented residential first flush diverter installation I have been able to locate in American agricultural history. The device itself is older than that record. It appears in German farming manuals from the 1880s under the term Vorklarbehälter, which translates roughly as pre-clarification vessel. The Amish brought it from Germany. They built it here. They kept using it because it kept working. And the municipal water industry, which has known about it since the 1970s, has never once included it in any public education campaign. Because a $10 pipe fitting that makes collected rainwater clean for supplemental use is a $10 argument against paying a water bill. Now let me show you the growing system that this water feeds. This is the technique that genuinely surprised me when I found it. The Amish family in Lancaster County that grows food for 8 people on a backyard-sized property does not use conventional row crop gardening. They use a system called intensive permanent bed cultivation, and the specific variant they use incorporates a principle from the 1931 Mennonite records. Instead of plowing a large area, you establish permanent raised beds approximately 4 feet wide that you never walk on. 4 feet is the maximum width that allows you to reach the center of the bed from either side without stepping into it. The beds are built up with compost, biochar, and organic matter to a depth of 12 to 18 inches above the ground level. Paths between the beds are covered with wood chips or straw. The beds are never tilled. The soil biology builds continuously. This system was documented by Alan Chadwick in the 1970s as the French intensive method, and by John Jeevons as biointensive growing. The Amish variant adds something that neither Chadwick nor Jeevons described. It is the element that makes their production numbers possible. The Amish call it successive planting with root zone inoculation. When a crop is harvested, the root zone is not removed. The roots are cut at soil level and left to decompose. New transplants are placed directly into that active zone within 48 hours. The transplant roots encounter an environment already charged with microbial activity. Establishment is faster. Early growth is more vigorous. The transition time between crops, which in conventional gardening involves weeks of soil recovery, is compressed to days. The family applies a specific inoculant, a mixture of worm castings, diluted compost tea, and a small amount of biochar fines. This mixture is applied directly to the transplant root ball before planting, coating the roots in a dense community of soil organisms. The result is a system where a small bed can produce 2 to 3 successions of crops per season with no purchased fertility inputs. The family that grows food for 8 people is working with 800 square feet. That is smaller than a standard living room. This is not theoretical. It has been documented. The Ecology Action Research documents yields of 3 to 6 times conventional production. They know the system works. They did not need research to tell them. Now let me put the water and growing system together. The roof cistern collects 24,000 gallons per year on a standard residential property in the mid-Atlantic. 800 square feet of intensive permanent bed requires approximately 15 to 20 gallons of water per day during peak summer growing. Over a 120-day growing season, that is 1,800 to 2,400 gallons of total irrigation demand. The roof catchment produces 10 times the irrigation demand. The surplus water stored in a cistern is available for household use and livestock. The Amish family in Lancaster County has a 1,200-gallon underground cistern fed by the roof collection system. They have never run short of water for the garden in the 40 years the current family has managed the property. They have never paid an irrigation bill. They have never installed a well pump for garden use. The rain that falls on their roof covers every drop the garden needs with capacity to spare. But there is a third water stream in the Amish household system that almost nobody discusses: gray water. The water that leaves your house through the sink, bath, or laundry drain. Not the toilet. The water from washing vegetables or rinsing dishes. The average household generates 40 to 80 gallons of gray water per person per day. For a family of 4, that is hundreds of gallons. The Amish redirect that water. The 1931 record described a gray water distribution system that ran sink water through a settling tank. The distribution line was a perforated clay pipe buried 6 inches below the surface. The gray water fed the root zone from below. Water carried by hand from a cistern is too valuable to pour into a drain when it can feed a fruit tree instead. There is one more component that closes the loop completely: seed saving. The Amish family has not purchased commercial seed in 3 generations. Every variety they grow was selected by previous generations for performance in their specific soil and microclimate. The germination rates are higher, the vigor is better, and the cost is 0 because the seeds come from the harvest. The knowledge of how to save open-pollinated seed is a renewable resource, maintaining the self-sufficiency of the land and the family. The Amish transmitted it anyway. Their seed-saving knowledge is specific, practical, and deeply local. The tomato variety the Lancaster County family saves has been grown in their specific soil for 60 years. It knows that soil. It knows the humidity of that microclimate. It knows the late blight pressure of that particular Lancaster County summer. Commercial seed companies breed for national markets. The Amish breed for their fields. The difference shows in the harvest. The cistern itself is the other piece of infrastructure. It is a poured concrete or stone-lined underground tank covered with a fitted lid. The lid prevents evaporation and excludes light, which would promote algal growth. The inlet pipe passes through the first flush diverter before entering. A simple hand pump or gravity overflow draws water for use. The tank requires cleaning once every 3 to 5 years. No electricity, no filter cartridges to replace, no monthly water treatment bill. Total material cost to establish this system is $200 to $400. That covers the cistern, first flush diverter, gutter modifications, pump and overflow. Installation is a weekend project for one person. Compare that to municipal water costs. A 1,200-gallon cistern properly maintained lasts 50 years or more. At $1,100 per year in bills, the 50-year cost is $55,000. The cistern is $400 once. Now I want to address the apartment dweller, the person who thinks none of this applies to them because they don't own a roof. The Lancaster County system contains one element that scales all the way down to a 5-gallon bucket on a fire escape. The root zone inoculation technique, worm castings plus compost tea plus biochar fines applied to the root ball of a transplant. An inoculated tomato plant will outperform one in commercial potting mix because the biology in the root zone is active from day one. A worm bin under a kitchen counter produces the casting. A bucket of water with compost steeped in it produces the tea. Biochar fines provide the carbon structure. The transplant goes into the bucket with its roots coated in all three. The technique belongs to anyone who understands why it works. Biology does not care whether it's in Pennsylvania or a bucket in Chicago. And here's the final thing I want to tell you. The thing that is harder to quantify, but may be the most important consequence. When the drought years come, and they come more frequently now than they did a generation ago, the household with a full cistern and a biologically active garden bed is not at the mercy of a municipal system under strain. When the supply chain disruptions hit, the household producing its own food and saved seed is not standing in a line at a grocery store. When municipal water rates increase, the household with a cistern and a garden is insulated from the increase in a way no financial hedge can replicate. The Amish built these systems because they understood the past. They built relationships with water and soil that did not depend on infrastructure. The cistern, the permanent bed, the saved seed. These are not technologies. They are relationships. Relationships with rain, with soil, with biology. The rain is already falling on your roof. It has been paying someone else's water bill while yours arrived in the mail. The only thing missing was someone connecting the downspout to a barrel. Now you know how to do it. Now you know why. The economic argument is not the most important part. The most important part is what it means to be a household that produces. Water is not a product. Food is not a product. They are the outputs of biological systems that need nothing from you except the decision. Drop your roof size and annual rainfall in the comments. I want to calculate exactly how many gallons are falling on your property. If you are a renter, drop your city. The container system and root zone inoculation works on every balcony or fire escape. In the next video, I'll show you what the Amish do with the surplus. Something the modern food industry charges $40 billion for.